Welcome to Real Estate Coaching Radio, starring award-winning real estate coaches and #1 international best-selling authors, Tim and Julie Harris. This is the #1 daily radio show for realtors looking for a no BS, authentic, real-time coaching experience. What's really working in today's market, how to generate more leads, make more money, and have more time for what you love in your life. And now your hosts, Tim and Julie Harris.
3, 2, 1, and we're back. It is July the 15th. Julie and I are in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Lovely Jackson Hole. First time we've been here. Pretty magnificent town, I have to say. And we are going to pick up where we left off yesterday and the day before, where we're talking about this report. Really, I think a white paper of sorts that came out from a financial analyst guy about EXPI, about EXP Realty. So this is your warning. If some of you do take offense when Julie and I lose our broker, how do I say this? When we're not being broker agnostic.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you're one of the people that are tender-skinned when we talk about EXP, this is your fair warning that we will be talking about EXP on the second half of today's podcast. But in the meantime, we have lots of fun reports from things that we've been experiencing on the road on our 20-state at least sojourn across the country. We have been, as promised, posting lots of pictures and updates on our Instagram feed, and that's at Tim and Julie Harris, and at Tim and Julie Harris on Instagram. We're also creating a website, which I'll be sharing with all of you guys tomorrow, that's also going to be updating with all of our where we're going to be and where we've been. And we're doing our best to plot the cities that we're planning on stopping in based on how many miles per day, frankly, I feel like driving. And and we've been meeting with a lot of people along the way, been getting a lot of texts and a lot of suggested travel tips and restaurants we should go to. And yesterday we had a lot of fun meeting with Yancey Perkins, who lives here in Jackson Hole.
Yep.
And we met with Lee Jennings,
yes,
who he used to live here, but he flew in to meet with family here, and we had a great afternoon with him and went on we did a lot of silly things yesterday with Zoe, didn't we?
Yeah. We did. Played in the park,
yep.
Had nice pizza with Lee, and then later on met up with Yancey. So it's great to see you guys whenever you're basically in the vicinity. And both of those gentlemen are EXP friends and colleagues, part of our EXP family.
Yeah, they're partners with us.
Yeah.
And we also had a great time going to the national parks. We went to Grand
Yes.
Teton. We saw all kinds of animals, and Zoe saw all these things for the first time.
Yeah,
So
we
saw a couple things that we've never seen before.
Bison.
Yeah, well, we've seen bison
pronghorn.
before, but
Those deer-like things.
Yeah, that was an interesting story that the guide told us. So pronghorns were, and this story is full of things I didn't know. Yep. So pronghorns are these, I don't know what you want to call them. They're not gazelles, but they look like a deer meets a gazelle, basically.
Yeah.
Deer and a gazelle had a baby. And these things can run, how fast did he say they could run?
I think he said like 40 miles an hour or
Yeah.
something.
And
Something crazy. And they look it too. They're very sleek. They're slender. They look like they ought to be fast.
And they have no natural predators because, and this is the part I didn't know, there used to be and now it's extinct, what did he say?
A North American cheetah.
Yeah, North American cheetah. Did you guys know that? There was a North American cheetah? And he said that the fur was very similar to the cheetahs that you can think of in Africa and, and all that. And yeah, so these gazelle type things, these pronghorns were, basically eaten by the cheetahs. That was their main.
That's why they're fast.
Yeah, that's why they're fast. And now there's nothing that can hunt the longhorn or the pronghorns because they're so fast. I thought that was kind of interesting.
They can outrun coyotes and wolves and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, and they seemed pretty confident about it.
I was going to say that. They seem kind of cocky, but I'll tell you guys a funny real estate story. So we're driving through Yellowstone, and there's occasionally a residential home. And these residential homes were they're obviously old with a lot of modern additions. A lot of them looked unbelievably cool. And the story goes that John D. Rockefeller Jr. was buying up this land through different holding companies and trusts to donate to the United States for a national park. And some of these people didn't sell, and so they held out. And so you'll be driving down these, national park Yellowstone roads, and all of a sudden you'll trip over a residential home, and the residential home is owned by a family. And the rule is that if they ever wanted to sell the property, they have to give the government the first right of refusal. And of course, the government will always say yes. And so these properties never actually go for sale. They just transfer from one heir to the next. And this has been happening since the 30s, which was pretty incredible. I didn't know that. But here's the funny story I wanted to tell you guys. So we're driving down this road, and our tour guide named Adam was doing a great job. He's just a plethora of information.
Highly recommend if you guys are doing tours of the national parks, definitely get yourself a tour guide because he took us places we never would have found on our own.
Yeah, a lot of gravel roads.
And he was friends with all the other tour guides who were reporting where all the animals were.
Yeah, they were texting back and forth. So if somebody saw a bear, or which we didn't see a bear, but if someone saw anything, they would text each other so they'd know where the animals were, of which there's just bazillions. And, the national parks are extraordinary. One of the greatest jewels of the United States for sure. So we were driving down this road and we come across this ranch, not a very fancy looking ranch. And all around this ranch, there was this very nice fence. It was sort of I think
like a farm fence kind of thing.
A farm fence. And
split rail type of thing.
Split rail, that's what it was. But here's the thing that really was entertaining to us. There were at least 500 bison. And they were all around this dude's house. Remember, this guy lives in this house. And all around the house were these big bison. All over his field were these big bison.
Yeah.
And then Julie and I were like, and bison are known to be ornery, right? And so this guy was every day. So the guy Adam was telling us that this guy rebuilds this fence on a regular basis, and bison are like rolling locomotives, so they don't care. They just walk right through the fence, and then they'll go up and they cozy up next to his house and look in his window. And he can't leave his house sometimes because the bison won't move, so he can't get his car out.
Yeah.
So it's just this really strange, bizarre parallel universe can only happen in that particular house in that particular where you're housed in from bison.
I know, because I asked Adam about that. I'm like, how does that guy get anything done? He goes, well, I guess he has to really plan out those grocery trips. And these are, I mean, if you've never seen a bison, they really are like animal tanks. They're just huge. Beautiful. I don't think I'd want. They are beautiful. They're very majestic. But even when we were driving around and we were kind of close to them, they are ornery. They seemed a little skittish.
One saw us. One saw. There was like 3 or 4 of them that were on a ridge. Actually, I put those pictures on Instagram, and they just sort of like stuck their tongues out, hissed at us or whatever bisons do, and just started running towards this. We were in a big Suburban and started running towards the Suburban and sort of veered off. But as they got closer, you just felt like you were, it's like some sort of bizarre. It was beautiful. It was majestic. You didn't feel threatened because you're in the Suburban, and the Suburban's about the same size as the bison.
But they certainly didn't feel threatened by us.
No, at all. And that's the thing that he kept on saying is the animals do not fear, humans at all, because for generations they've not been hunted by humans inside the parks. I'll tell you the stories that I really like though. Talking about the wolves.
Yeah, that was very interesting.
Right, and the size of the wolves, and how he was talking about the different packs, the wolf packs, and how there's a very distinct wolf packs, and how there's a lot of controversy here between the ranchers and the wolves. But some of these wolves, when you guys see these big, we didn't see any wolves, but we saw paintings of them and pictures of them. You talk about an animal that just, it's one of those things that if you were to see a wolf in real life, I mean, your natural
like
instinct,
a real wild wolf,
or a pack of them, your natural instinct would be to be scared as hell.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you had to sort of admire them while you were looking.
For sure.
They're so beautiful.
They are.
Oh, and he did give us some funny advice too about bears. And this is, I'm sure those of you who live with bears and already know all this.
Well, we were on a bear hunt, so.
Yeah, we were looking for bears. We put $100 bounty on whoever saw a bear in our Suburban first. Whoever spotted the bear first. We didn't see any bears. But so he was telling us that here in Yellowstone, there's people that are attacked. Yeah, in Teton, that there are people that are attacked by bears. And actually, Lee Jensen told us that he had a friend when he lived here that was actually eaten by a bear.
Yes,
so
it does happen. They're the real deal.
Right. And there's 2 types of bears, right? There's basically grizzly bears and there's black bears. Brown bears are grizzly bears, except that sometimes a black bear can also be brown.
When a rhombus isn't a rectangle.
Exactly.
One of those types of things.
I guess,
all I would see is bear.
Well, that's totally right.
It's like people that explain different types of sharks. Like, I'm not going to stop and take a picture and Google it. I'm just out of there.
Yeah, exactly. But remember how he went into detail and he said, well, here's all you have to know. They're bears. But so your natural instinct, again, doesn't work for you in this environment. So if you see a bear, he said you're supposed to basically stand your ground and yell at the bear. I mean, seriously. Bad bear.
Go home.
No bear. Go the opposite direction. I mean, seriously.
And I'm like, it doesn't work on our Frenchie who's like 40 pounds. So
or our child. I mean, what makes you think a 800-pound bear is going to go, oh, Dan, you're right. I'm sorry. Did I offend you?
I didn't scare you, did I?
Did I scare you? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to go the other way. No, that's not good. No. Okay.
No. And evidence of this is that everywhere you go, whether it's a gas station or it's a hardware or wherever, is Bear Away spray.
Yeah, bear spray.
Bear spray everywhere.
Now, here's the thing about bear spray. I have a little bit of, I was a Boy Scout, so I have a little bit of background with this, but nothing like what they have to experience out here on a regular basis. I mean, these people put on bear spray away in the morning like they do deodorant, basically. And so,
Or you'd better.
Yeah. Well, so Adam was saying that the pepper spray, which is the bear spray, is like commercial grade industrial strength.
Yeah.
And, well, so if you're in the woods and whatnot and you see a bear, first of all, you're completely be in flight mode, right?
Yeah.
You're sure as hell not going to be in fight mode. And you're going to grab your bear away spray. You're not going to stop to try to calculate which way the wind's blowing.
Where the wind's blowing, which
And
is
so-
a problem.
Right. So you could actually shoot that, stuff in the air and completely screw yourself, making it so, frankly, you make the bear's, human treat a lot easier to manage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like bear spray becomes frosting on the human.
Right. Well, so you added a little bit of spice to the human.
Yeah. So
with
he
the
said
pepper spray.
absolutely, even though it's everybody sells it, that it's like, your absolute last resort. So, I'm thinking we'll just stay in the truck. I'm good.
That was our move.
Yeah. But it was, I have to say, to Adam's credit, he did a great job. And, when everything is so packed, it's kind of like, when you go to Disney, you get a guide because you don't want to stand in line for 3 hours for every last thing you want to do. So he had a lot of great, park history, lots of animal facts, things that we definitely wouldn't have known on our own. So I think that was money well spent on getting a private tour guide.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, frankly, we went to other parks. I think we mentioned this yesterday. We went to other parks. We pull in these national parks, and they'd be like, "Do you have a reservation?" And we're like, "What?" Yes,
Yeah.
you have to have a reservation to get into the park. Going back to the point we were making about the fact that there's definitely everyone and their brothers definitely traveling. And inflation, by the way, it's a real thing.
It's real.
Who knows whether it's going to be transitory. So transitory is a funny word. Just shifting ever so slightly, talk about something
It's okay.
economic. But transitory, there is no, how long is transitory exactly? So when you hear somebody, a politician, for example, say inflation is transitory, it's to ask them, okay, so can you please define what the hell transitory is?
It's such a nebulous word.
It's a BS word.
It's like, I don't really know, but I'm going to use this word to get you off the topic.
Well, exactly, because the fact is what happens is if there's no real way to fight inflation other than for the Fed to start doing the opposite of what they've been doing.
Mm-hmm.
So if inflation kicks in a meaningful way, which in our opinion, we're seeing evidence of that now on this sojourn for sure.
Yes.
And you're experiencing it. I know a lot of agents are like, obviously they're so focused on seeing the inflation or the rise of prices of real estate.
Mm-hmm.
And, nothing wrong with being myopic and focusing on that. That's where you make your living. But the reality of it is unlike anything we've ever experienced. Julie and I sort of experienced it when we were kids in the late 70s.
Not in a personal way. I mean, we were just kids. But
we were just kids. We're Zoe's age. But when you're looking at, for example, in our lifetime, there's never been inflation like we are experiencing, and frankly, what it appears that we're going to start experiencing on a higher level. And you're going to see the increases of prices of everything. And we don't need to talk about inflation on this podcast, but it's kind of funny to go from the academic conversation that we were having about it 6 months ago, a year ago, on this podcast, talking about the effects of real estate, and the continued effect of real estate. But now to see it in actual real life is pretty amazing.
Real.
And here's the thing that makes me a little bit like when we were in the car with Adam, right?
Mm-hmm.
He was our tour guide, 28 years old, very nice guy.
Mm-hmm. Smart.
And I was just thinking to myself, how's this guy ever going to be able to buy a house? I mean, I
know.
And Julie and I are 100%, we're not, how do I say this? We're very, with regards to our economic perspectives, I would say we're very conservative, capitalist type thinking. But it does sort of, it's sad because what you're going to have to do if you want to buy, like he works in Jackson Hole as a tour guide, but he's going to have to live probably an hour away just to find a place that he can afford to buy, or he's going to stay a renter forever. And that's
he was talking about it's even hard to be a renter in this market.
Yeah, that's what he said.
Yeah.
Well, he said he was renting a room in a house.
Yeah.
For how much did he say?
$1,500 per room.
A room, right.
Yeah.
And
that even that is competitive to even find something like that.
Right. Well, and this is, Jackson Hole, Wyoming.
Yeah.
And this is basically just a vacation mecca. This is where people go to have fun.
Yes, but it's also where he's going to make a living.
Work, right.
And so what are the options for someone like that? And he said that, he and his friends kind of joke about this is that, they look at their parents' ability to buy a house and that they didn't have a lot of student loan debt like some of his friends do.
But counterbalance that, though. We're from Columbus, Ohio.
Right.
Realistically, not a lot of people want to live in Columbus, Ohio unless they have a job there or a family there. It's not like Jackson Hole, Wyoming.
Well, right. I mean, he has some other things to battle because lots of people want to
Right.
live here. But he did have some interesting perspective. And he said it's always been like that because Jackson Hole's always been popular. But thanks to COVID, now they're competing with people that he mentioned from Seattle and California.
New York.
And New
remote
York,
workers,
who are
basically.
remote workers, and that those people have very consistent income and are more competitive even on trying to find something to rent. And he said that crowd is new to Jackson Hole. They didn't previously have to compete with that other person wanting to rent the same thing or buy the same thing.
Oddly enough, Jackson Hole has unbelievably good internet connection.
It's like lightning fast.
Yeah, I mean, all over.
It's incredible.
It's incredible. 5G everywhere.
Even we were doing fine even in the mountains.
Yep. So that's the thing that's really, again, talking about this on the podcast, we're experiencing so many generational shifts that some of them are predictable. If you study demographics, you could sort of predict, well, millennials are going to start getting married and they're going to be Adam's age and they're going to start making babies and they're going to want to buy houses and those kind of things you can kind of predict back from the beginning of time, right? I'm sure Tim and Julie Cavemen, they would we would need a bigger cave, right?
Right.
I mean, that's always going to happen. But now what you're seeing is this technologically induced migration trend, and as a result, people say COVID, but I don't think it's COVID. I think
that's an element, not the element.
Right. It's basically people, the advance of technology and people being able to work remotely, and also there's a real disdain for. I think living in cities anymore, honestly. I think people are feeling really, I don't want to make generalizations or sound political, but certainly from what we've been seeing on this trip so far, the recurring theme we see is when you get into the cities, they definitely, in some of these, areas we've been in, it does feel uncomfortable. It just does. When we were driving through certain parts of Atlanta, I mean, we were driving through certain parts of Atlanta, not on this trip, but on a previous one. And Julie wanted to go get some socks for Zoe or something. We were walking around this very nice shopping mall. What area was that? It wasn't Buckhead, but it was near it, right?
No, I can't remember now.
It was where Collette McDonald sells real estate.
Yeah, it's like
beautiful
between
area.
Brookhaven and Buckhead.
Yeah, Brookhaven. It was Brookhaven.
Yeah.
But we were walking past, and now this was before basically COVID was, completely resolved. Well, I know it's not yet, but you guys get the gist of it. But the stores had all been looted. And that's something that I had never experienced that before. Have you? No, you haven't. And so these are the types of things that once you experience, you feel when you feel unsafe, you will do anything and pay anything to make that feeling go away. And that's, I think, the other thing that's leading to these big migration trends to places
people are
like
seeking
here.
comfort.
Right. And so anyway, for you and I to go talk about this theoretically from our podcast, sitting in our house in Puerto Rico.
Well, that's different. We're experiencing, that's one of the reasons we're on the road here.
Exactly.
And meeting people like Adam and, meeting with Yancey and Lee and all of you guys. So yeah, it's different to be sort of boots on the ground type of thing. But yeah, so that's kind of where we're at. And I think next we're going to Gardiner, Montana. So we're driving through Yellowstone up to Gardiner, Montana, which is kind of southwestern Montana type of area. So if any of you guys are nearby there, that would be awesome to meet up with you. And yep, I'm good to wrap if you are.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have to go in Libertas. We have to do
this other thing.
Yeah, you do. Well, so then after that, we're going to Montana, and we're going to go to Gardiner, Montana. We're going to spend some time in Yellowstone. We're going to stargaze,
yes,
right? And then we're going to drive, obviously, to the West Coast, and we're hoping to go up to north of Seattle, and we have so many friends on the West Coast, and we're going to be driving down. And like I said, we're going to be reporting where we are and what we're doing at timandjulieharris.com, but there's an actual map that we're going to somewhat follow that's going to be
subject to some minor changes.
Right, and so some of you guys are frustrated because we don't stay a lot of time in your town. Well, I mean, we're not going to stay a lot of time in your town, some of your towns.
Well,
we're just going to drive through.
And we were going to go to Red Lodge next. However, the only thing available was a teepee for about $300 a night with nothing except the tarp over your head.
Yeah, Red Lodge, Montana.
And we love Red Lodge, but there was just nothing available. So.
It was a literal teepee.
Go to VRBO.com. I've seen teepees. I've seen tents. People are doing RVs and stuff like that. So, not that we couldn't handle it, but I didn't really want to unpack a suitcase in a teepee. So
no, or
maybe that makes me fussy, but
because if you want to talk about where big bears live, they definitely live there. All right, so listen, we did promise to talk a little bit more about this article, and just to remind you, this article was written by, and we are publishing this on our website timandjulieharris.com, was written by Sean Eidings.
Idings or Iddings, one or the other.
Yep, and he's calling it my highest conviction stock idea. And this is all about eXp Realty. And the reason that we like this article, frankly, can you find out where I was there, is because the article is not written by, and there frankly are a couple assumptions and things that he said that are incorrect. Julie and I aren't grinding the incorrect points in his article. We're just skipping over them.
This or
but
this.
let me look. You can start. This one's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it's interesting to hear a perspective on a company because Julie and I have been associated with eXp since December of 2019, and we have a great revenue share group at eXp. And if you're interested in joining eXp, we'd love to talk with you. You can just text me directly at 512-758-0206. That is my real cell phone number. Do not call, text 512-758-0206. If you're ready to join eXp, just text me directly at 512-758-0206. If you want to learn more about eXp, just text eXp to 37. Do you remember?
Oh, no.
Brain
Been on the road too long.
We have
have them text your cell phone.
No, it just go to ylibertas.com. Ylibertas.com. Spell it for me, would you?
WHY and then Libertas is LIBERTAS.com.
Right.
Ylibertas.com.
And watch the videos that are on the top of that website, and then you can get a sense of basically why what we're offering at when you join with Julie and I with our group called Libertas, which is Latin for freedom. All right, Julie, so why don't you pick up and read his next couple points?
Yes, and remember, this is coming from somebody outside of all of our industries. He's not a broker, not an agent. He is an investor and an entrepreneur, somebody who manages money. So I think this is an interesting perspective. One of his points is, this is his title, One Last Tells of a Great Business Abhorred by Competitors. Traditional brick and mortar real estate brokerages hate eXp. Why is that? Some of you guys have been sucked into that thought, but why is that? Established agents who were brokers' cash cows are leaving in droves to eXp. Brokers are seeing their businesses decline. Now, if you are one of those brokers, you can do something about that. Keep that in mind.
Well, let me just do a quick little edit there. So, if you have an existing brokerage, big, small,
medium,
short or tall, doesn't matter, or a team, you can actually move to eXp, and eXp is not a franchise. They're just your broker. So if it was Tim and Julie Harris Real Estate, it would just stay the same. Our logo would stay the same. Our branding would stay the same. Our colors would stay the same. Nothing has to change. It's not like you're joining a franchise or buying a franchise. So as an eXp agent, as an eXp, if you're a broker now or a team, you could keep all of your own logo, branding, and everything, and it only has to say on it brokered by eXp. There is no forced expense or forced rebranding or any ridiculousness like that. And the reason it's important to point that out is because some of you have generational real estate brokerages. Others of you have spent so much time, money, and effort building your real estate brokerage or your team, and you don't want to lose all that money and effort and that time, right? Well, you don't have to when you join eXp, unlike if you were to, for example, buy a franchise where they'd force you to change everything, where you'd be forced to basically become part of, a franchisee.
That's right. Big difference that a lot of you guys don't realize. Now, Keller Williams, the model that eXp has improved upon, dismissed eXp as competition when they had 1,500 agents 5 years ago. Now, eXp has more than 57,000 agents.
59 as of this week.
I think it's 59. We're about to hit 60 any minute now, I think. Keller is only now trying to replicate eXp's virtual office for new broker owners. Another point of difference. As we mentioned before, eXp was born in the cloud. It didn't have to convert to the cloud.
Well, Julie's going to talk about competition here in a second, but the reason, and I get this question a lot, is why is it that, what would prevent one of these big franchise models to start competing with eXp and copying their model? It's they can't. The business model won't work the same. We explained this on the podcast we did, I think, 2 days ago, but at the end of the day, they can't compete with eXp because of the fact that they have franchise agreements. They already have all the business structure in place, and for them to emulate the biggest USPs, the biggest unique selling propositions of eXp, they'd have to literally start new companies.
That's right. And I think we need to do this part because this is kind of a big chunk tomorrow.
Well, let's go for another 5 minutes. This
is
interesting.
So feel free to interrupt me.
Let me scan this.
Wonky with you here.
Oh, no, this is good. Go ahead.
All right. So
this is really important. This is where we get into the high nerd stuff.
Yes. Okay. So again, use your investor brain on this. How to value EXPI. That's the stock. He writes, few bottlenecks are present to inhibit EXPI's growth. So I don't see why they can't maintain growth at mind-bending rates for the next 5 years. This also speaks to people who think that it's too late. It's not too late.
Oh, no.
Okay, so he says, I've broken down the situation into 3 possibilities with 5 years out. All are precisely wrong. At least this exercise gives us an idea of the possibilities. He said, let's start looking at EXPI agent revenue per year. EXPI revenue per agent has been growing steadily over the years. And I'm not going to read all these figures from 2016 to 2020, but what I will say is that they have steadily increased. It's never taken a step back. In 2016, average revenue per agent was $22,305. In 2020, jumping forward, the average revenue is now $43,528.
Now that's way more. That effect is far more than just inflation, right? Of
Yes.
home values. That has to do with the fact that the nature of the agents that are joining now are obviously agents that are in production.
Absolutely. So here's the worst case scenario. He says, let's say EXPI's growth slows for whatever reason. Instead of an extra hot rate of growth, it slows to 28% per year. EXPI would reach 200,000 agents 5 years out if it is, quote, only slowing to 28%.
Now, let me put historical perspective on that. From what I understand, the largest real estate brokerage in history has been Keller Williams, and they had 160,000 agents. So based on this guy's projections, and again, he's not a real estate person. He's not with EXP. This is not a paid article. This is just a stock analyst guy who is obviously an investor. I believe he's a private equity guy. Anyway, he's projecting that on the low end, EXP will have 200,000 agents within 5 years.
That's right. And he says, again, he's being kind of conservative here. He says maybe the market isn't as hot in 5 years. That's a reasonable assumption. Assume EXPI revenue per agent declines 20% to $34,822. Total revenue from 200,000 agents is still $7 billion. And EBT margin stays the same. This is getting a little wonky. Okay, so net present value just cut down to $20 per share. EXP, but he says, but EXP more likely does better than that. So here's a different projection. He says, maybe EXPI has 300,000 agents worldwide at year 5. That would be a 54% CAGR. I have to look up what that is. Still slower than their previous growth rate. To put that number into perspective, that would be 15% of agents in the U.S. They currently are at 3% and expanding internationally. I think this scenario is more likely than the first. He goes on to say, imagine also that EXPI's revenue per agent grows at a slower rate. It's been increasing at 14% per year to 60,000. In this scenario, they would generate $18 billion in revenue in year 5. I think 60,000 per agent is possible because the average real estate agent generates 49,000, including the split that goes to the broker. Say 30% extra on average, would indicate agents on average in the U.S. generate about $64,000 in revenue. EXPI tends to attract the producing agents in the U.S. I think that's really key that he recognizes this.
That was something that the competitors for EXP were trying to basically,
That's like their
attack.
go-to objection handler.
Well, it was their go-to like almost 3 years ago, where they would say, well, it's only attracting new agents. Absolutely not true. It's attracting business-minded agents.
That's
for
right.
sure.
He says
Completely
EXPI
different.
tends to attract the producing
There you go.
agents in the U.S. and internationally, so I think they could get better than that in the U.S. average. Okay, so he goes on to say, what happens if EXPI knocks it out of the park? Assuming the same numbers as our previous example, but with revenue per agent at 70,000 and 400,000 agents, we get 500% upside. He says, I think 70,000 is not ridiculous as EXPI gets into the mortgage and title insurance. So that's a little bit more math there, but, and then he goes into talking about the advantage of having Virbela, meaningful contributor 5 years out. The possibility of Virbela is spun out of EXPI, but we can get into a little bit more projections. He does talk about some risks. He talks about what happens if there's a recession, but we'll do that tomorrow.
So the moral of the story is if you, and I'll tell you, and I think I've done my math right on this. He didn't talk about this, but I believe EXP is growing as a company a little over 7% in net agent count per month. In other words, after agents leave, because of course agents are going to leave any brokerage. I think the average brokerage in the country loses 50% of their agents per year. Again, don't hold me to these numbers, but I believe EXP's churn rate or attrition rate is in the 30% range. Again, I'm not positive about that. I'd have to check and do the math, but I am fairly certain that EXP is growing by around 7% net agent count per month, which means it'll grow by 84% per year, which means this guy's projections, frankly, are too conservative. And the other thing, the average revenue per agent. So he's, if it's at 40,000 now, how's it going to go to 70,000? Well, that has to do with a lot of the fact that they're going to be attracting basically more experienced agents. Another little agents were for a while saying, well, I am a luxury agent. I need to be a luxury brand, and I can't be working with EXP that nobody knows. But what's happening is people realize that you're the brand. You are the reason that you got that listing, not the brand you're associated with. And anyone who's been in real estate for more than 2 seconds knows that the reason that they are getting the business is not because of the real estate brand. There will never be, now this may have not have been true 30 years ago, but it's certainly true now. You will not get a listing because of the brokerage you're associated with. Full stop. You will get a listing because you're the agent that the seller chooses to work with, and the brokerage you're associated with may have something to do with that, but in a very minor way. The game has moved on since basically the 70s, and now it is agent centric, and sellers choose agents who are proven to be able to get the job done. And this is what Julie and I do in our coaching business. Which, by the way, thanks to all of you who are joining our coaching, our premier coaching program. We've had literally hundreds of you have joined in the past couple months. And if you want to learn more about our coaching program, just go over to timandjulieharris.com, click on coaching, and the first program is called Premier, and you can join our premier coaching program for around $100 a month. But at the end of the day, really what you need to be thinking about, and I'll stick with his 5-year projection, over the next 5 years, have the mindset that this is going to be the best 5 years of your life. Have the mindset that there are no dark clouds on the horizon. Have the mindset that you're going to be able to make enough money to not just have a great lifestyle in the interim, but to make enough money that you're going to be able to take care of yourself and your family and maybe even your grandchildren and so on, create generational wealth. And that's something you can do if you just accept the fact and move from your mind that there's any sort of, zombie apocalypse that's headed your way. And there are a lot of people that want you to believe that, and those are the people that are killing your optimistic sense. And remember, if you don't believe that tomorrow's going to be better than today, what are the chances of you actually making much of an effort today? So one of the smartest things you can do is you need to think about what are the multiple ways that I can be creating money? What are the multiple ways that I can be creating opportunity? Like we were meeting with Yancey Perkins yesterday, and he brought us in a very nice gift bag, and it was, very sweet man. And so if you're listening, we appreciated all that. But he said he hit the cap at EXP. He was at I think it was Berkshire, or he's at some one of these pseudo luxury brands, and he said he was the amount of money he was paying, I don't remember the numbers exactly, he was paying to his broker, but he said in his first month at EXP he capped. So at his first month at EXP, he pays a $16,000 cap, and now he's 100%. The amount of money he's going to be able to save that he would have otherwise been paying to his broker is extraordinary, especially if he puts that money to work, and we teach you guys how to do that in the coaching program and investing and whatnot. But he's also associated with EXP, and yesterday we were talking about how he can build his revenue share group. So here's a guy that's got his head screwed on straight. He's going to be focused on obviously selling real estate, focused on maximizing, he's going to make the most money he can because he's not overpaying his broker, and that's because he's at EXP. And then all the other opportunities he has associated with EXP, the stock awards, the revenue share. I mean, this is how, if you were to choose to think like this 5 years from now, really 24 months from now, your life could be on a completely different trajectory. So do take this seriously. If you're ready to join EXP, and if you're looking for a sponsor that's going to definitely support you in every way, Julie and I are formally applying for the job. I want you to consider having Julie and I as your sponsor. You can text me directly at 512-758-0206, 512-758-0206. If you would like more information on EXP, you can go over to whylibertas.com, and watch the 2 videos that are at the top of that page. In the meantime, you guys have a fantastic day, and we'll talk to you on the show tomorrow.
This program has been a presentation by Tim and Julie Harris, Real Estate Coaching. For more information on our real estate coaching and training programs, visit our website at timandjulieharris.com. Remember to tune in weekdays at noon for upcoming shows, and until next time, thank you for listening to Real Estate Coaching Radio with Tim and Julie Harris.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.